This tiny piece of silicon took a company known for making pretty laptops and turned it into a performance monster that no one saw coming.
It was rendering
2 times faster.
3 times faster, 4 times, 8 times,
10 times.
much faster. There's some dark magic at work. I don't know what it is.
It just feels super smooth.
I've been a Mac user my entire life, from my first clunky white plastic laptop to the maxed out Intel Mac I bought in 2019. I thought I knew what Apple was capable of, but here's the thing, if you'd asked me 5 years ago whether I recommend a Mac or a Windows PC, I'd have to say Windows without hesitation. Back then, let's be honest, Macs just sucked. They were slow, buggy, and couldn't handle anything demanding. Even as a lifelong Mac user, I had to admit, Windows was the better choice for most people. And then, the M1 happened. This chip flipped an entire industry upside down.
This is so good. Like, I don't think there's going to be another computer to buy than a Mac.
I believe the M1 MacBook Air is the best computer you can buy for your money.
Switching from the M1 wasn't just an upgrade. It felt like going from a bicycle to a Lamborghini. Everything snapped into place instantly. No fan noise, no overheating, no slowdowns, just clean, cool, effortless performance. And for the first time in years, sticking with Apple didn't feel like loyalty. It felt like the right choice. This is a traditional PC. A traditional PC is basically a team of parts supposed to work together. A graphics card over here, a CPU over there, a cooling system trying its best to hold everything together. It's powerful, yes, but it's also messy, loud, and energy hungry. But the M1, that's a completely different philosophy. One chip, everything built into it. CPU, GPU, memory, neural engine, all fused into a single piece of silicon. Not stacked, not stitched together, designed to work as one. And because of that design, it's not just efficient. It delivers performance that rivals machines twice its size, while barely shipping power. For years, Apple's computer felt like they were fighting against their own hardware. My Intel Mac had impressive specs on paper, but in real life, it was loud, hot, and always on the edge of giving up. I kept asking myself, why wasn't I using Windows instead? The value was better, the performance was predictable, and nothing overheated for simply opening Chrome. So how did Apple going from playing catch-up to leading the entire industry almost overnight?
All right, well, Apple hitting another record high today. The stock has now gained more than 80% this year, its best yearly performance in a decade.
This is the story of how one chip flipped everything, how Apple took a risk that sounded ridiculous, ignored every critic, and created a processor that didn't just change laptops, it changed the direction of modern computing.
We're announcing that the Mac is transitioning to our own Apple Silicon.
We're now in the eras of M5 Macs, but let me take you back in time to 2005. That's when Steve Jobs made a bold move. He stood on a stage and announced that Apple would abandon PowerPC processors and switch to Intel.
We are going to begin the transition from the PowerPC to Intel processors.
It was a game-changing decision at the time. Intel promised speed, reliability, and compatibility with wide PC ecosystem. For years, it worked. Apple's laptop became faster, sleeker, and more versatile. You could even install Windows on your Mac using Boot Camp, and for a while, it felt like the best of the both worlds. But as the years went on, cracks began to show. By the end of the decade, Apple's laptop started to feel outdated.
This is quite simply the worst MacBook I have ever owned, and I think it might be cursed.
While PCs were pushing boundaries with powerful GPUs, better thermal management, and cutting-edge performance, Macs seemed stuck.
Overheating monster.
Intel chips weren't keeping up. They were hot, power-hungry, and plagued by bottlenecks.
It felt really slow, it would throttle like crazy, even with the fans ramping up to 100%, so it was super loud. So I really wanted my gigahertz back, because in the beginning, when I bought the MacBook, I was super happy with performance, but now, where did my gigahertz go?
And here's the kicker. Even though you technically install Windows on your Mac, it never quite worked right. Drivers were buggy, performance was inconsistent, and the whole experience felt like a compromise. It was supposed to be the ultimate flexibility, but in reality, it just highlighted how far Apple had fallen. But there was another factor at play here: design. For years, Apple products were defined by one man, John Ive, Apple's chief design officer.
The world's most famous designer,
Says Johnny Ive.
Sir Johnny Ive.
Please welcome to the stage, Sir Johnny Ive.
Underneath his leadership, Apple introduced iconic design like aluminum unibody MacBook Pro and the ultra-slim MacBook Air. But by late 2010s, eyes focus shifted toward making devices thinner and lighter, even if it came at the cost of functionality. Remember the controversial 2016 MacBook Pro? It ditched essential ports, had problematic keyboard, and prioritized slimness over power. Critics argued that Apple had lost sight of what professionals needed. In 2019, John Ive left Apple to start his own design firm. His departure marked an end of an era and signaled potential shift in Apple's priorities. Without Ive's singular vision, Apple had the opportunity to rethink not just the design of its laptop, but also the technology powering them. And here's the twist. While we are busy complaining about overheating laptops and broken keyboards, Apple wasn't asleep. Behind the curtains, their engineers were studying something far more successful: the A-series chip powering iPhones and iPad.
Behind it is intense technology.
What's running all this incredible software is our A4 chip. It's custom-designed silicon, and what that gets you is remarkable speed and efficiency in a really small chip.
Chips that were destroying the industry benchmark while sipping almost no power. And slowly and quietly, Apple realized the truth that would reshape their entire identity. If Apple wanted to survive the next decade, Intel wasn't gonna take them there. They needed to build their future themselves. But before we talk about how Apple pulled one of the biggest pivots in tech history, we need to understand just how deep Intel's decline went and why it left Apple with no choice but to break away. Apple's journey to M1 didn't happen overnight. It started years earlier, long before anyone outside of Cupertino saw it coming. In 2008, Apple made a quiet but pivotal move. They acquired a small chip design company called PA Semi. At the time, no one thought much of it, but the acquisition marked the beginning of Apple's secret weapon, custom silicons. The PA Semi brought some of the brightest minds in chip design into Apple's fold. These engineers laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the A-series chips, the same chips that power iPhones and iPad. For over a decade, Apple owned its skills in mobile processing, pushing the boundaries of performance and efficiency. By the time the A14 binary chip debuted in 2020, it was clear Apple wasn't just keeping up with the competition, they were leading the pack. The success of A-series chip taught Apple something critical. Custom silicons would outperform off-the-shelf solutions. Unlike Intel AMD, which has design chips for a wide range of devices, Apple could tailor its processors specifically for its hardware and software ecosystem.
Integrating hardware and software is fundamental to everything we do. That's what makes our products so great. And silicon is at the heart of our hardware.
This tight integration unlocked levels of performance and efficiency that were simply impossible with Intel's generic chips. But there was another lesson that Apple learned from mobile. Being energy efficient, iPhones and iPads needed chips that could deliver incredible power without draining the battery. As laptops became thinner and lighter, this focus on efficiency became even more important. Apple realized that if they could bring same principles to Macs, they could solve two problems at once: performance and battery life. By the late 2010s, Apple's patience with Intel was wearing thin. Intel's delay, thermal issues, and lack of innovation left Apple stuck in a rut. Meanwhile, Apple's own chip design were getting faster, smarter, and more efficient every year. The writing was on the wall. Staying with Intel meant failing further behind. In 2020, Apple made an announcement that everyone had been waiting for.
And now it's time for a huge leap forward for the Mac. Because today is the day we're announcing that the Mac is transitioning to our own Apple silicon.
They were leaving the Intel behind and replacing with their own custom design chips.
Tim Cook was taking the stage just now and saying the Mac will be transitioning to Apple's own chips. That means moving from Intel's chips, of course, which Apple has used for years, to its own custom processors.
This wasn't just a change in hardware, it was declaration of independence. No longer would Apple rely on someone else's roadmap. From now on, they would control their own destiny. When I first heard about Apple's plan to switch their own chips, I was skeptical. Could they really pull it off? Intel had become the backbone of Macs for over a decade. Was Apple biting off more than it could chew? But then I remember something. Apple doesn't do things halfway. Every step they'd taken, from acquiring PA Semi to perfecting our A-series chips, had been building toward this moment. And deep down, I know this wasn't just about fixing the problems with Intel. It was about reimagining what computers could be. Little did I know that the M1 was about to blow all my expectations out of the water. On November 10, 2020, Apple held an event that would change everything. It wasn't just another product launch, it was a declaration of independence. For years, Apple had relied on Intel to power their Macs, but this time, they were doing something different, something bold. Craig Federighi, Apple's senior vice president of software engineering, took the stage and introduced the M1 chip. At first glance, it looked like just another piece of silicon, but as the presentation unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary chip. The M1 wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary. So what made the M1 so special? First, there was its unified architecture. Unlike traditional processors with separated CPU, GPU, and memory, the M1 combined everything into one single chip. This meant faster communication between components at an unprecedented speed. Then there was the performance. Apple claimed the M1 was up to 3 times faster than the previous Mac CPU task.
CPU soars to a whole new level of performance. That's up to 3.5 times faster than the previous generation.
And up to 6 times faster in graphics, and capable of handling machine learning tasks at lightning speed. And let's not forget the battery life up to 20 hours, longest ever in a Mac. But the real magic of the M1 wasn't just in numbers, it was how it felt to use. Apple launched instantly.
It opens like that.
File transferred in seconds. Even the most demanding tasks like editing 4K video or running multiple virtual machines felt effortless. It wasn't just a chip, it was a glimpse into the future of computing. And when I first saw the M1 announcement, I was skeptical. Specs were impressive, but it couldn't really live up to the hype. After all, Apple had promised bigger things before, and in reality, it didn't quite match expectations. But then I started hearing the reviews. Tech journalists were calling it a game changer.
The M1 chip has changed the game. I don't even know if it's fair to compare these to Intel Macs because the M1 really is that big of a deal and the first device.
Developers were raving about how much faster their workflow had become. Even gamers were impressed by its ability to run titles smoothly.
Apple can now have a CPU-GPU combo that'll actually run games and run them really good. That's going to be a game changer because a lot of the times, the only reason I see PC people keeping PCs is to play games on.
But that's when I knew I had to try it for myself. And it wasn't easy. I spent years using Intel-based Macs while they were imperfect. They were familiar. But deep down I knew I couldn't ignore what Apple had achieved. The M1 represented a new era of not just Apple, but for laptops as a whole. So I took the plunge, and let me tell you one thing. It was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. From the moment I powered on my new M1 MacBook, I could feel a difference. It wasn't just faster, it was smarter. Every interaction felt seamless, every task effortless. The M1 didn't just meet my expectations, it blew them. When I first fired up my M1 MacBook, I thought it would be fast, but I had no idea how fast. Editing a 4K video that used to take minutes to render now finished in seconds. Running multiple virtual machines, no problem. Even gaming, something Macs were never known for, felt smooth and seamless. But don't take my word for it. Benchmarks told the same story. The M1 outperformed even high-end Intel chips in raw performance while using fraction of the energy. It wasn't just a step forward, it was a leap into the future. The M1 didn't just impress me, it blew everyone away. Creatives who once relied on Windows machines for video editing were switching to Macs. Developers found their workflow faster and more efficient than ever before. Gamers long ignored Apple, discovered that M1 could run demanding titles like Shadow of Tomb Raider at impressive frame rates. And then there was the battery life. Up to 20 hours on a single charge. For the first time, I could work entire day without worrying about plugging it in. It wasn't just convenient, it was liberating.
The M1 based 13-inch MacBook scored 40% higher battery life as compared to the Intel MacBook Air.
Tech journalists called it a game changer. Marcus Brownlee called it the most impressive laptop chip ever made.
It's the M1 chip here, and this chip is super impressive.
Linus Tech Tip said it was unbelievably fast.
The new M1 MacBook Pro and MacBook Air are outstanding. Their performance almost lives up to Apple's extraordinary claims. Their look and feel is reassuringly Apple grade. Their battery life is, simply put, exemplary, and the transition from x86 to ARM, so far at least, has gone shockingly smoothly.
Even Windows enthusiasts were admitting that Apple had done something incredible. But it wasn't just pros who were impressed. Social media was flooded with stories from everyday users. People who had shown off MacBooks for years were coming back. One user tweeted, "I haven't been excited about a computer since the original MacBook Air." Others said this thing was beast disguised as a notebook. And for me, M1 wasn't just a piece of hardware, it was a revolution. It reminded me why I fell in love with Apple in the first place. It wasn't about flashy features or gimmicks. It was about solving problems in ways that felt magical. There was one moment that stood out to me. I was editing massive 4K project late at night, something that would have crashed on my old Intel MacBook within minutes. But with the M1, it didn't just work. It flew. And that's when it hit me. The M1 wasn't just a chip. It was a symbol of what's possible when you dare to think differently. the first time in years, I felt excited about the future of technology. The M1 wasn't just a product, it was a catalyst. And as I looked at the innovation it sparked, I realized something, that this was only the beginning. Because this story, it didn't start with the M1. It started much earlier, long before Apple Silicon existed. And for me, it began in the most unexpected place. This is a PowerBook G4. I started my Apple journey with this. Back in the days when burst element felt like the future and startup chime meant magic, I carried this thing everywhere, from schools to internet cafes, to every little project I dreamed up as a kid. The PowerBook was a glimpse of what was possible, and the M1 made it real. It was the first time a computer made me feel something I hadn't felt since I opened the G4 Wonders. And as I held my old laptop next to the M1 machine, I realized something profound. Apple hadn't just reinvented the chip, they have reinvented themselves. This journey from a clunky aluminum relic to the futuristic ARM-powered machine wasn't just a story, it was a story of an entire industry waking up and realizing the rule had to change. And if M1 was the spark, then the future we're heading into, that's going to be something none of us are ready for.